I never thought she would betray me like this. She was someone I had once called a friend, someone who had smiled at me while secretly stealing everything I had built. And my husband, the man who promised to love me forever, he didn't even hesitate. It started slowly, the way most betrayals do. Little changes in his behavior, excuses that didn't make sense, whispers of doubt creeping into my mind. He worked late more often. His phone became his shadow, never leaving his side. When I asked if something was wrong, he would sigh, annoyed, brushing me off like I was imagining things. Then, one evening, I heard her name slip from his lips in his sleep, a name I knew too well. At first I told myself it meant nothing. Maybe it was just a dream. But deep down, I knew better. The next day, I watched him more closely. His coldness, his sudden obsession with how he looked before leaving the house. The way his eyes no longer searched for mine the way they used to. And then, I saw it. Her number flashing across his phone screen when he thought I wasn't looking. My heart pounded, my fingers trembled, but I didn't say a word. Not yet. I needed to be sure, because if I was right, the betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. The weight of suspicion settled deep in my chest, but I refused to let my emotions take over. I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes. So I started paying attention. I noticed the way he smiled at his phone when he thought I wasn't watching. The hushed conversations he had in the other room. The way he suddenly started dressing better, wearing cologne even on nights he claimed to be working late. Then the excuses became predictable. "I have a late meeting," he said one evening. "Don't wait up for me." But I did. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of his car pulling into the driveway. It was past midnight when he finally came home, smelling like a perfume that wasn't mine. I could have confronted him right then, demanded the truth, screamed, cried, but I didn't. Because the pieces weren't just falling into place, they were leading me straight to her. The next morning, I took his phone while he was in the shower. My hands shook as I scrolled through his messages, my heart racing. And then I saw it. Her name. Her words. "I can't wait for you to be mine completely. Last night was amazing. She has no idea, does she?" A cold numbness spread through me. It wasn't just an affair, it was worse. She wanted to replace me. And from the way he responded, he was letting her. I placed his phone back exactly where I found it, my hand steady despite the storm raging inside me. My world had just shattered, but I refused to break. Not yet, not in front of him. When he walked out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, acting as if everything was normal, I smiled. A real, calm smile. And that seemed to confuse him. Maybe he expected me to be distant, to question him again. But I didn't. Instead, I went about my morning as if I hadn't just uncovered the biggest betrayal of my life. I needed time to think, to plan, because I wasn't going to beg him to stay. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already chosen to betray me. No, I would let him go, but on my terms. That day, I started preparing for the inevitable. I gathered my personal documents, made copies of everything important, and transferred money into an account with only my name on it. I refused to be left empty-handed while they laughed at my pain. And then, just as I had expected, that evening he gave me the speech. "We need to talk," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about us, and I just don't think we're working anymore." I tilted my head, watching him carefully. I knew what was coming. "I think we should separate," he continued, pretending like this was difficult for him. "It's for the best. For the best." I wanted to laugh at the audacity. He didn't even have the decency to admit the truth. He wanted me to believe this was just about us, that it had nothing to do with the woman waiting for him. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply folded my hands in my lap and nodded. "If that's what you want," I said softly, my voice steady. His brows furrowed slightly as if he hadn't expected me to agree so easily. He thought I would fight, that I would beg, but I had no intention of making this easy for him, because while he thought he was walking away freely, he had no idea that karma was already on its way. The next few days passed in a blur, but I remained calm, watching everything unfold exactly as I expected. He packed his bags without guilt, barely looking at me as he walked through the house we had built together. His mind was already somewhere else, with her. I knew where he was going. He wasn't staying at a hotel. He wasn't looking for space like he claimed. He was moving in with her, the woman who had stolen him, thinking she had won. I let him go without a single protest. No tears, no questions, just silence. And that seemed to bother him. "You're handling this really well," he said hesitantly as he grabbed his suitcase. I met his gaze, my face unreadable. "What else is there to do?" I asked simply. He nodded, but there was uncertainty in his eyes. He had expected a fight, a dramatic scene, maybe even a final plea to stay. But instead, he was leaving behind a woman who wasn't broken. And that's when I saw it. A flicker of doubt. Good. Because what he didn't know was that I had already put things in motion. While he had been busy sneaking around with her, thinking he had the upper hand, I had been preparing for this exact moment. I had already spoken to a lawyer. I had already made sure that when the divorce papers came, I would walk away with everything I deserved. He had no idea what was waiting for him. And as I stood in the doorway, watching him drive off to his new life, I whispered to myself, "Enjoy it while it lasts." Because karma was about to hit faster than he ever expected. It didn't take long for the cracks to appear. At first, everything seemed perfect for them. She flaunted their relationship online, posting pictures of their romantic dinners, their weekend getaways, and the way she finally had him all to herself. I watched from a distance, not with bitterness, but with quiet patience, because I knew the truth. What starts with betrayal never ends in happiness. Behind the carefully curated images and fake smiles, reality was beginning to set in. She had won the man, yes, but she hadn't won his heart. The first sign, his regret. It started subtly. He wasn't as present in their pictures. His smiles didn't reach his eyes. Friends told me he looked distracted, like a man who had gotten exactly what he wanted, only to realize it wasn't what he needed. Then came the arguments. Loud, explosive, messy. I didn't have to be there to know. Mutual friends, the ones who had once believed in their so-called love story, whispered about it. She was controlling, jealous, insecure. She had fought so hard to have him, and now that she did, she was terrified of losing him. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had stolen him, and now she didn't even trust him. And as for him, he was beginning to see it too. The way she questioned his every move, the way she picked fights over the smallest things, the way she became the very thing he had once tried to escape. I wondered if he had started to compare. If he lay in bed at night next to the woman he had thrown everything away for, and realized that the peace he once had with me was gone. Karma was knocking on their door, and this was only the beginning. It didn't take long before the whispers turned into full-blown rumors. They weren't happy, not even close. People who had once cheered them on, the ones who believed in their so-called true love, were now raising their eyebrows. Their perfect romance, the one built on lies and betrayal, was starting to crumble in the most predictable way possible. She had fought so hard to take my place, but now She was drowning in her own insecurity. She accused him of being distant, of not loving her the way she thought he would. She checked his phone constantly, demanded to know where he was at all times, and he hated it. The irony? This was exactly what he had done to me. Ignored my feelings, dismissed my worries, made me feel like I was the problem while he was sneaking around behind my back. And now, he was the one being treated like a suspect. Karma wasn't just knocking. It had walked right in and made itself comfortable. And then came the ultimate betrayal, the one she never saw coming. One day, a friend sent me a screenshot, a message from her. "I think he's cheating on me." I stared at the words, letting them sink in. It was almost too good to be true. The woman who had so proudly stolen my husband was now terrified of losing him the same way. She had taken a man who was never truly hers to begin with, and deep down, she knew it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just sat back and waited. Because the best part of karma? It always finishes what it starts. The cracks had turned into fractures, and soon their entire relationship was falling apart. It was happening faster than even I expected. She had fought for him, lied for him, betrayed for him, only to become the woman she once despised. The desperate, suspicious, paranoid girlfriend who searched for answers in places she never had to before. Because deep down, she knew. She knew what kind of man he was. She had watched him lie to me, sneak around, tell me one thing while doing another. She had laughed about it, thinking it made her special, thinking she was different. But now, she was in my old position, and it was eating her alive. The messages continued. "He's acting weird, coming home late. He says it's work, but I don't believe him. Do you think he's seeing someone else?" I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. The woman who once gloated about taking him from me now wanted me to validate her fears. But I didn't need to say anything. She already knew the answer. And soon, so did everyone else. Because karma, it doesn't miss, and the man she stole, he was already moving on. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. One night, I got a call from a friend who still kept up with them. Her voice was practically dripping with amusement. "Did you hear?" she asked. I hadn't, but I already knew what was coming. "He cheated on her." The words sent a strange sense of satisfaction through me, not because I wanted revenge, but because it was the natural outcome of a relationship built on betrayal. He had found someone new, someone younger, someone exciting, someone who, just like her, thought she had won a prize. And she? She was devastated. She had fought so hard for him, burned every bridge just to have him, and now she was the one left picking up the pieces. The same pain she had once dismissed, the same betrayal she had once laughed at, it was now hers to carry. I imagined her sitting in their shared apartment, reading his messages the way I once had, wondering where she'd gone wrong, wondering why she wasn't enough. And I wondered if, in that moment, she thought of me, if she finally understood the depth of the hurt she had helped create. But the difference between us? I had walked away, with my dignity intact. She was left with nothing but regret. And as for him, well, men like him never change. They just find new victims. And his next one had already taken her place. It didn't take long for the world to see her downfall. The same people who once supported her, who cheered for their so-called love story, were now whispering behind her back. The same way they had gossiped about me when I lost him. Except this time, there was no sympathy. She had made herself the villain, and now she was living the consequences. She tried to keep up appearances, posting old pictures of them together, pretending like nothing had changed. But people weren't stupid. They knew. The energy was different, the smiles were forced. And worst of all, he was nowhere to be seen. No more romantic dates. No more over-the-top displays of affection. The man she had stolen was now avoiding her, just like he once avoided me. And then, one day, I saw it. A new picture. Him. With another woman. She hadn't even had time to process the breakup before he had already replaced her. The comments were brutal. People tagging her, asking questions, leaving laughing emojis under his new post. She had laughed at my pain. She had flaunted her victory. Now she was the one drowning in humiliation. I didn't reach out. I didn't need to. Because karma had done what I never had to. It had taken everything from her, the same way she had once taken everything from me. The silence didn't last long. Soon I started hearing the rumours. She wasn't doing well. Some people said she had tried to win him back, that she showed up at places he frequented, hoping he would see her. Others said she had turned bitter, lashing out at anyone who brought up his name, pretending she had never cared in the first place. But the truth was, she was drowning in regret. She had expected a love story, a happy ending. She had expected that once she got rid of me, she would have him all to herself. But she'd been nothing more than a temporary thrill. And now, she had no one. I wondered if she had started thinking about everything she had done. If she had replayed those moments when she smugly believed she had won. If she had realised that stealing a man doesn't mean keeping him. And as for him, he had moved on as if she never existed, just like he once did to me, just like he would do to the next one. She had once laughed at my pain, but now she was living in it. And the best part? I never had to lift a finger. Karma had handled everything for me. One day, as I was sipping my coffee at my favourite cafe, I heard a familiar voice behind me. I didn't turn around at first, but then I heard my name. I knew who it was before I even looked. When I finally turned, there she stood, the woman who had once stolen my husband, now looking nothing like the confident, smug person she used to be. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Her once perfect makeup was smudged, her eyes filled with something I recognised all too well. Heartbreak. For a moment, we just stared at each other. And then, she spoke. I wanted to say that I'm sorry. I blinked, surprised. Of all the things I expected, an apology wasn't one of them. She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. I thought I was different. I thought he really loved me. Her voice cracked slightly. But now I know how it feels. I know what I did to you. I took a deep breath, watching her. The woman who had once taken everything from me was now standing in front of me, completely broken. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hate. I just felt pity. Because unlike her, I had already healed. I had already moved on. I wasn't the woman crying over a man who didn't deserve me anymore. I gave her a small, calm smile and said the only thing that needed to be said. I hope you've learned your lesson. And with that, I picked up my coffee, turned my back to her, and walked away. Because karma had already done what I never needed to. As I walked away, I felt something I hadn't expected. Complete peace. No anger, no resentment, no need for revenge. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that life had already balanced the scales for me. For so long I had carried the weight of betrayal, thinking it was something I had to fix, something I had to understand. But standing face to face with her, seeing her completely shattered, I realised the truth. I had already won. Not because she was suffering. Not because he had moved on to another woman, repeating the same cycle, but because I had escaped. I had built a new life, a better life, one that wasn't tied to a man who was incapable of real love, or to a woman who thought happiness could be stolen. As I stepped outside, the sun felt warmer on my skin, the air lighter around me. I had let go of the pain long ago, but now I had also let go of the past. She was left picking up the pieces of her own destruction, and he would never change. He would keep searching, keep hurting people, keep chasing temporary thrills. But me, I had walked away, and I was never looking back. As I walked down the street, a quiet smile played on my lips, not because I had won some kind of battle, but because I had finally freed myself from it. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. Karma had already done its job. The woman who once laughed at my pain was now drowning in her own. The man who thought he could replace me so easily was stuck in the same cycle, never truly satisfied, always searching for more. But me, I was happy. I had rebuilt my life not out of spite, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I had finally realized my own worth. I wasn't the woman who had been left behind. I wasn't the woman who had been betrayed. I was the woman who had survived, healed, and come out stronger. And that was the greatest victory of all. Because in the end, karma didn't just come for them. It set me free. Thank you all for listening to this story with our channel. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe to motivate us to bring more interesting stories. Much love to all of you.